Alright, welcome back to Self Talk Garage. And today we're messing with the old F350. Recently I've bought a few parts for it, so we probably got a couple things being uploaded about this truck. But it's a 1994 F350. It's got the 7.3 IDI in it because 94 is a split year. The 94.5 on is Power Stroke. So anyways, I've got the 94 the beginning half of the year, so it's an IDI. It is turboed. Um, it's got the same setup as the Power Strokes, minus all the electronic injectors, so on and so forth. So therefore, it doesn't have as much power as those trucks. But overall, it's a good truck. The injection pump's been tuned. The turbo's been messed with. A few other odd and end things. But the truck has some age on it. It's set for a good while, so I've been working on it off and on since I bought it. I've had it for a little over a year now. But what we're doing today is I got a Facet fuel pump. It's an electric standalone fuel pump. So what we're going to do, this Facet is capable of moving up to 45 gallons per hour and then some. 45 was the low number, I believe, so it's like 45 to 60 gallons per hour, because all these electric standalone pumps have a variation. None of them are an exact math where it's like 36 gallons per hour period. They all give you a little bit of a buffer window. But anyways, it's supposed to carry 6.5 to 8 psi. So I got this pump was around $100 because it has 1/4-inch outlets. So in other words, it has a 1/4-inch bung and I can run it to 1/4-inch fuel line, and that is why it's capable of moving so much fuel. So what we're going to do to put it on this truck, it grounds onto the frame of the truck. That's its ground. It only has a power wire running into it, and it grounds by being mounted to the frame. So the place we're going to mount it on this truck obviously probably isn't going to have the greatest ground. So we're going to have to hard ground it, which I haven't really shown y'all my little setup in the cab, but I have a power distribution box in there, and I can turn all my electronics on by pushing a button. So, because we still have the manual pump on this, because I wanted the manual pump return. So, we start the truck off the manual pump and then kick on the electric to make sure we get the adequate fuel pressure. It still carries good enough fuel pressure to start the truck, but as far as performance, where it has the tuned injection pump, it's not carrying the proper fuel pressure. So that's where the electric pump comes in. So like I said, we still have the manual for starting it, and then we can kick it on with our electronic box in there. And I've already ran a harness prior to this because I currently have a Holley electric pump on it, but the Holley pump was rated, it was like 4 to 6 or 4 to 7 psi. And after I hooked it up, I used my fuel pressure gauge that I have hooked up to this truck, and it was indicating that it was literally making 4 psi maximum at idle. And at idle, we're supposed to be looking at about 6. So that's where our problem lies. Then obviously at full throttle, it was dropping out to 1 psi and 0. And at full throttle, you need a minimum of 2 psi. So I am kind of worried this pump might be too much pressure, but if it's too much pressure, I can up the return line size and put a regulator in it in order to control that. All my return lines have been re-ran. We've ran them a different way, and I know that's probably partially to blame for our fuel pressure problems, but at the same time, putting this bigger pump on, it should eliminate all the problems that we currently have. But first things first, this pump is got some weight to it. It's probably about 5 pounds. So with that being said, I'm not really willing to let it just float like we did this Holley pump. How the Holley pump just kind of hangs out there and it's held by the rubber hoses and the fuel line. What we're going to do with this one, I'm actually going to make it a mounting bracket, because we have to mount it somehow in order to get it to ground. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get this Holley pump pulled off, and then we're going to start making some measurements, and we're going to start making up a bracket so that way we can get this fuel pump mounted up. So like I said, I'm going to get the Holley pump pulled off. We're going to go ahead and let whatever fuel is stuck in the lines drain off, and then we're going to get some metal in our tape measure and come out here and start measuring things out and see what we come up with. Alright, so we got that pump sitting down in there, and you can see where I just tag them into this hard line. I have another one of these that are factory that hasn't been cut, that is full length. So if we ever want to change it or change the placement of the pump, it'll be as simple as putting the factory line back on. But for right now, we've got this set in there. It's all set up. I just started the truck, made sure the pump works. The pump is working. Everything's flowing. So right here is the wiring harness I have that runs into my switch body inside the cab. So the way I tested it, I just took this in because this is the positive wire and just stuck it into the positive terminal. But obviously that's not a long-term thing. So what we're going to do now, just to get us by until I make a mount for this pump, because right now this pump's actually sitting there pretty good. It's really not doing bad at all. I was rather impressed with it. And this is a directional pump. Let me see if I can get the camera in. You all can see where it says in and out. Hang on a second. I'll go in this direction. Right there, stamped onto the body of the pump, it says in and out. They're right on the top side of those 90s. And the bottom there, that says in. This one is fuel out. So, obviously you have to put it in the right direction, because our filter is in the bottom, and it is a changeable and cleanable filter. It has a steel screen along with a, it's not a paper element, it's a different type of material, but it has a material element along with a steel screen and a magnet to catch metal particles. So, what we're going to do now is we're going to get an end wired up on here. We're going to put an eyelet on this negative side here, which we're going to do plugs, but we're going to bolt the eyelet to the bottom of our mount right here so we can get the pump to work for now until we get us a mount made up. Because yes, I will be putting it on a mount, all because it lines up with the bottom bolt hole right here on the front of the engine. So I'll be able to pull this bolt out and we can make the mount to where we bolt it on right here and it'll come over to the side, and then the bottom of the pump will reach it from there. So, I mean, it's set back a little bit, but obviously when I go to make the mount, I can literally put a bend in it here to kick it down to here to where that bolt is, and then bend it out. Let me zoom in. There you go. Because you can see it's probably a ½ inch, if that, maybe an inch max. So we could put two 90-degree bends, and the bend will help brace the bracket up against this piece of aluminum here that the alternator mounts to. And we can bolt it on here. It'll brace up against this mount, and then it'll go right over to the bottom of our dealio. And then we can put our ground wire onto that framework and have the pump fully mounted. All I expect to see out of this is maybe a small performance gain, all due to the engine no longer starving for fuel. And also, we get the fuel pressure up, I can turn the boost back up, because the issue I was having when I had the boost turned up on this, it was running out of fuel and falling on its face. And with diesel engines, running out of fuel is a very bad thing, which it's bad for turboed gas cars as well. Like, it causes all kinds of internal issues. And that's also why I believe I'm having to rebuild the top end of this truck ultimately. So, with that being said, I'm going to go grab the wiring kit and our camera stand. I'm going to set y'all up and we're going to get this done because it is starting to rain. Alright, I'm sorry for the camera angle, but like I said, it's raining, so I'm having to put y'all under the hood of the truck where I can. My phone is actually starting to die, and that's what I'm using to film this with. So, if it does die, I'll get it charged up and I'll bring y'all back so we can at least do the test drive. So, but until then, what we're doing right now is I'm just putting a female connector end on this wire, which I am going to use weather tight connectors, but I ran out and had to order some and they are not here yet. So once they get here, I'm going to be redoing this wiring anyhow. So we're just kind of throwing it together for the right now, so that way we can get the results we want to be getting. Alright, so that's good enough. Now, like I said, this is for our positive. Shit, that's the wrong end. Our positive has a male end, so we're going to have to change that real quick. Alright. And obviously these connectors aren't even for the right size wire. So that is another reason as to why we're going to be swapping all this out. But for now, I am using what I got, and what I got is this. Alright, we're going to start there. Bring it over here. And I'm just overly crimping these because I am trying to make sure they don't come off for any weird reasons. Alright, so that is our positive. And as you can see, it just plugs right in there. And now what we're going to do for our negative is I'm going to get a piece of wire, put a ring terminal or a ring connector on it. So that way we can just bolt it to our framework here. And the rain's really starting to come down, so I'm going to shut the camera off. And I'll show you all what it looks like when I get done, and we'll go for the test drive. See if we got any performance gains or losses with this. Okay guys, so I didn't end up filming a video of once I got in the truck and started driving. It was dark by the time I actually had a chance to get in the truck and go anywhere. But ultimately it did make a decent or a reasonable amount of difference. I mean, before the truck, I mean, it would black smoke, but it would only be when it was under load. So, I mean, it wasn't like other tuned, like modern day tuned diesels where you put a tune in them and boom, the thing will roll coal, it hauls booty, you know what I mean? But, so I put the pump in, the fuel pressure, I mean, it doubled literally. We're running 8 to 9 PSI at idle, and that's actually supposed to be the maximum. They tell you not to go past 8 PSI. So it's running about 8 PSI now. Well, between 8 and 9. If it's a full tank of fuel, it runs about 9. 3/4 to a half a tank, it drops to 8 and holds 8 consistently across the board. So, I mean, it worked out. It made a very good difference. So now when I get in the throttle, it pulls all the way through the RPM range. It used to be at about 22 to 2,500 RPMs, the truck would just stop pulling. I mean, it would still accelerate, but it wouldn't be like in your seat pulling. So that pump did change that. Now it goes all the way to red line, and I mean, you're in the seat. So that's a good thing. It's no longer starving for fuel. It's no longer blowing a gray or blue smoke, which in diesels, that is a very bad thing. Now if I get in the throttle, it actually blows black smoke. It rolls coal the way it's supposed to. The engine's actually running cooler than it used to as well, because lean is mean in gas cars. Lean in a diesel is not good at all. I mean, it might make you a little bit more power, but realistically, you're just going to burn the engine up over time. So, like I said in that video, we are going to have to go through the top end of that engine. I need to do a valve job on it. I need to replace the lifters. The only parts I haven't been able to find is rods and rockers. Rods and rockers for that truck are practically non-existent. So the idea I have to repair the rockers is we're going to take them off, and I'm going to take my stick welder with some 70-18 rods, and I'm just going to weld them. And then take my digital calipers and take them and start finishing off the face of them back to factory thickness. All because just the parts aren't out there anymore. The dealer can't get them for me, no one can. And that's where a lot of my parts have been coming from, is the dealer, because no one has them. So I've tried checking other trucks. The other trucks I've checked out of junkyards and whatnot, their rockers are all in the same condition, because these trucks have bad oiling problems. Like once they get sludged up, the rods get packed with sludge, and then your oil just isn't getting to the top half of the motor. So I believe it was in my rod knock video, diesel knock found, I think is what I named it. I ended up taking a can of brake clean, and I blew everything out of every single rod in the engine while I had the valve covers off. So doing that, that started allowing oil to make it to the top of the rods and getting the rockers. So I mean, that helped. And then I changed the oil in it, and when I changed the oil, I added a bunch of stuff into the oil. So before I did that though, I ran that motor clean through it. It's Mr. Gasket or something like that, or Gunk makes it. It's an engine cleaner and sludge remover. You add it to your fuel, you let your vehicle idle for 5 minutes, and that whatever that solvent is goes through and dissolves all the sludge in the engine. So it makes a huge difference, a dramatic difference. Takes all that crap out. It actually looked like there was, I mean, I guess what you see in like cartoons and stuff, that old tar that dinosaurs were getting caught in, that's what it looked like. It was coming out super thick and goopy. So we did that, and I hope that helped. I hope it made a big difference. Then I got my crankcase vent where it was modified, and people had it running out into the ozone, which that doesn't do anything to help your trucks. I have no idea why people are doing that. It's nothing for a performance gain. It just makes your truck look like it's smoking all the time. The crankcase vents are supposed to be fed back into the intake. So where I couldn't get mine to feed back into the intake because I couldn't find factory parts for it, I made a pipe and we just bridged it over to the air intake, and we're allowing that air intake to pull that crankcase pressure out, which my truck has 190,000 miles on it now. So like I said, it obviously has crankcase pressure. The rings are getting wore, etc. Another reason why we're taking the engine apart. But as you can see, I'm getting into a whole spill about the truck. But overall, that fuel pump made a massive difference. A huge difference. I've hauled a car with the truck recently. I hauled the car about 100 miles, roughly. Roughly, it was about 100 miles. And I mean, it done great. No issues with pull, no issues with temperature. It never got hot. The oil didn't get too hot, which that's another issue I've had with the truck. I'm going to have to replace the oil cooler at some point because my oil is getting up to like 150 and 160, which is bad. But, so we're going to have to do that. But when we were hauling that car, the oil temp, I think the hottest it got was 140, which is still not good. But it's nowhere near as bad as 160. So we're starting to get all these issues worked out with this thing. It's just an old truck. It's been neglected for a long time. Previous owners haven't taken care of it. So there's just a lot of different things we're having to do to it to get it back to, I guess, a good place. Because right now, it is a very reliable vehicle. I can get in it and go anywhere I want to go in it. Truck's never left me stranded. It's always started first time. Well, unless I run it out of fuel, because that's happened. I put a new fuel tank in it, a new fuel pickup, and a new tank screen, which those screens in those, it's like an upside down funnel. And then there's just a metal mesh screen that runs across the bottom. They suck. Literally, they suck. They fall off of that, your in-tank pickup, and so that means at a quarter tank of fuel, you're out of gas. The fuel slosh, once it sloshes, it allows it to suck air. Your truck's dead. You got air in the lines. You got to reprime everything. So that's one thing I'll say about that truck. That sucks. I even had the last one. I ordered a new one. Got the new one in. Went to a machine shop. Talked to them about making me one. So that way it couldn't come off. So they made me this little aluminum adapter that I could actually stick a pin in to hold this piece on, and it still broke. It still came back off, and I'm just not taking the tank off again. So, yeah, there's that. But all in all, we're starting to run them down. We're starting to get it cleaned up. We're starting to get it figured out. We're starting to get it fixed. So there's going to be plenty more videos of this truck coming, because once we pull the engine out, there's probably going to be a multi-video series on that, because I'm probably going to walk you all through step for step on what we're doing, how we're fixing it, and any issues I find along the way. Because there's just no videos out there of these IDI engines, especially on YouTube. There's just nothing. But these IDIs are just as capable of performance as these newer Power Strokes are. The only difference is you got to do more to them. There's a lot more mechanical things you need to go through in order to get them there. And hopefully I can do that for y'all. If not, I'm sorry for getting your hopes up. But anyways, this is Self Talk Garage. We put a Facet fuel pump on our 9473 IDI. Hope you enjoyed. We'll see y'all on the next one.